Okay. Analysis of how to deal with Mass Adept with Warp Prism harassment on Ulrina. Let's think about this scenario. So, what do we have? Ulrina has an incredibly short rush distance. The players can just walk a few paces and then be punching each other in the face. So, what do? What I like to do is think about how to summon a lot of swarm rather than emphasize upgrades for being strong later on, because it's a very small map, so you really want to make sure you're not going to die to any major timings. What are the timings that are really strong from Protoss right now? Adepts. Why are Adepts strong? Adepts are strong because they're highly mobile units. They can phase shift and basically threaten multiple locations at once. They two-shot workers, so if there are two of them, they'll be able to hit them in each volley, which is really amazing. And a lot of Protoss players are opening with two gateways, a cybernetics core, and an expansion, kind of all at the same time. It's a safe build that has a potential to deal big damage against greedy Zerg play. So, it's a really common build that you'll face on any map, especially this map. The first Overlord, I like to place kind of behind the natural, so you know the saturation of the natural, and you could peek in and check the gases. My second Overlord is flying over here to the third base to see when they take the third nexus. The first two Adepts come in. I made the mistake of not producing lings, 8 speedlings, and this is really easy to deal with. If you go gasless, like if you want to go gasless, you can fight the Adepts, but make sure it's on creep. You can't chase them off creep, but you can usually surround Adepts on creep, even with slow lings. So my thinking here is going hatch gas pool with ling speed first, so I can take some map control against these early Adepts and deny them from continuing to harass in all my bases, and get up that 3-base economy. So my goal here, now that the Adept threat is done, is to drone as quickly as possible. I'm not going to take a lot of gas until I hit 3-base mineral saturation, so that's my primary target right now. Saturate those minerals. Protoss has a slight worker lead, but Zerg doesn't have to just produce one worker at a time from each town hall structure. If you have all this larva on the ground, you can spend everything into drones. Boom. The worker lead is being established. I'm opening up the map by breaking these rocks with the lings. The lings won't be able to deal any damage here in such a small number. 8 lings cannot beat 4 Adepts and 2 pylon overcharges. But 8 lings trade really well against rocks. The rocks don't attack back. Quick fact. Here, what do we see with this Overlord? Chrono boosted Twilight Council. This could be either Blink or the Adept attack speed upgrade. Don't really know which one it is. The reason I guessed that it was Adept was because I had seen many more Adepts than Stalkers. They can just make 2 Stalkers from these gateways and push away Overlords, and then keep to their Adept plan. And let's face it, right now, Adepts are incredibly strong. It makes more sense to go for Adepts than it does for Stalkers. So, I'm going for Speed Roaches. There's no Evo for upgrades, because I don't have a ton of gas, and upgrades are going to scale much later on, but I'm worried about a big attack now. Why? Because there's no third nexus, because there are no gases at the natural. So, I don't want to overreach with my economy. I have 16 workers in the main on minerals, 1 gas, 15 workers at the natural, no gas, and 15 workers at the third base with no gas. Spines cost no gas, great. I'll put 1 spine in each base, so they can threaten multiple bases, but spines trade incredibly well against Adepts. Look at them poke, poke, poke. It also makes it a lot more difficult for them to focus your workers down, because the AI, if they attack move, they'll target threats before non-threats. So they'll focus the spine before they focus workers. They would have to manually right-click the drones, or move far away from the spine and hold position to shoot nearby drones. So with this attack, we take very little damage. Let's look at the workers killed. 7 worker kills isn't a big deal when Zerg is already on 3 bases that are injected. Alright, the Adept Prism Harass has been decisively defended. how do we press an advantage? Since I made a ton of units, might as well move across the map and see what they can do. It's a really common mistake for players to make a big army and then just sit at home. If you have a big army, go poke and attack them, especially if you have fast units, like roaches and lings. You can always retreat if you need to. So boom, we killed some stuff. That's great. When you're thinking about the ZvP matchup, it's really good to be taking trades against Protoss, because the main advantage of Zerg over Protoss is the rate of their production. These hatcheries can be producing tons of stuff, and Zerg can tech switch super fast, so it tends to favor Zerg for even-size armies to keep trading. Roaches trade pretty well against Stalkers, if neither have upgrades. I'm spending my gas, my 3 bases of gas, into Lurker tech, again with no upgrades. Because their third nexus is non-existent, and their gases here were really late, their ability to produce a counter unit to Lurker is going to be very, very weak. They'll only be able to make a couple disruptors by the time that Lurkers are in the game and presenting a really big threat. So boom, 15 roaches, switching into some hydra production to leverage Lurker aggression. I have 59 workers against the 2 base Protoss with 45, because we denied this third nexus once. Roaches are really good units against adepts. You can generally think of Roach as a really strong and sturdy unit against just about everything except for Immortals, Disruptors, and Void Ray. They're really good against adepts, they're pretty good against Stalkers, and they're really good against Zealots. So having a Roach buffer is really good in ZvP. Boom. Taking some trades. My Lurker tech isn't ready, but Hydras are just pretty nice DPS, and I do have the Roach buffer. So basically here, I'm spending my Roach buffer and continuing to trade to keep those supply values down. I have a big worker lead, so taking a bunch of aggressive trades will favor me because I have better economy and better production with all these injected hatches. In Legacy of the Void, you're going to be taking your 4th base much earlier, so as soon as you have 3 base saturation, going ahead and taking the 4th base is really good. You don't necessarily know if you can drone it or not, but this gives you 6 supply, it establishes creep in this area, and as the main is mining out, you can transfer workers to your 4th base. As soon as the Lurker den is done, morphing as many Lurkers as can be afforded, and then taking the Hydra upgrade. It'll allow the new Hydras to move around on the map a little bit more easily. A good tactic to use here is hold position on the lings when they're in the probe line. That will prevent them from being aggroed onto things like a pylon that's overcharged, or maybe like a zealot that would be between the mineral patches. Hold position and they'll just eat up anything that's in their way. So here, thinking about disruptor shots coming into your army. Disruptors are incredibly powerful against clusters of army, but you can kind of anticipate when they want to attack you and where the majority of your value is concentrated. So I do have a lot of Lurkers here, but it takes 2 disruptor hits to kill them. So I'm not too worried about this disruptor shot. I don't need these Ravagers because the opponent doesn't have enough gas to use a bunch of force fields to partition off my army. They basically spend all their gas into disruptors and immortals. What am I producing here? A bunch of Hydras. Hydras are going to be a really good way to supplement the damage here. And then with all this Lurker value, you can basically end the game. Straightforward way to play Orina against Protoss. Boom.